what's shaking? I'm Patrick Giguere, the Cosmic Alchemist, and welcome to this video. So this one is all about the lunar eclipse that's going on Tuesday, the 16th of July, 2019. It's a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. So the maximum for the lunar eclipse is going to be about 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, so that's East Coast of the United States. So I'm going to front load you the gist of this up front because there's a lot of details. I'm going to be talking for a while. And if you don't want to hang out for 30-40 minutes, I'll give it to you now, the synopsis, and then we'll go deeper into it. So really, to sum this one up, to sum up this lunar eclipse, basically the grace period is up. And what I mean by that is kind of the grace period for kind of our denial and sort of our willful ignorance collectively, no matter who we are, no matter what political party, religion, race we associate with, doesn't matter. And, you know, I'm not old, but I've lived long enough to figure out that there are times in your life where you can get away with being kind of clueless and being sort of wrapped up in your ego, and then there are times when you can't. You know, and it's especially when you're younger, you sort of get a grace period and you can kind of, you know, you can be kind of on an ego trip and really only thinking about yourself and, you know, not seeing things through other people's eyes, you know, not seeing yourself through other people's eyes. But then you reach a certain age where you really can't get away with that anymore. And, you know, your egotism and your misdeeds, whether willfully or, you know, unwittingly, they start coming back at you and things start falling apart. You know, kind of our, you know, the monuments we build to our egos start falling apart. So we're at that point right now. And, you know, in my July forecast, my solar eclipse forecast, I talked about denial a lot. And, you know, collectively, we've been in denial about, you know, our self-righteousness and our extremism over what we believe in. And so this lunar eclipse is really bringing that, and this is the way I read it, it's bringing this grace period to a close. And so it's in, and I read it this way because this lunar eclipse is happening at the 29th degree of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is all about belief systems, philosophies, you know, and religions are part of this. But like I always say, so many things are religions these days, because really a religion is just, it's just a belief system that gives you your whole worldview, and it basically dictates all of your thoughts and all of your actions and all of your views and preferences and prejudices. So, you know, religions can be education, money, your job, your possessions, you know, your materialism, science, academia, you know, it's whatever you put absolute blind faith into and you don't allow yourself to question it. You know, it's like even, you know, people who are into science laugh at religious people, but science is a religion too because it has its holy men and holy women and its holy books, and if you question them, then you're no longer in good standing with that community. So it's like how churches declare people heretics. So it's all the same thing. You know, it's whatever you put all of your faith and your belief into is your God. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you don't believe in sort of a traditional spiritual kind of a God. You still have one and you still have a religion. So, you know, one of the big religions, I mean, especially within the last 15, 20 years is politics, because political news has just gone through the roof and it's everywhere. You can't get away from it. And, you know, really it's annoying as shit, in my opinion. So it's a big distraction, you know, and it's an illusion because we act like we know who these people are who are like bossing us around and, you know, trying to manage our lives. But it's coming through television provided to us by media companies that are in business to make money. But again, we're self-righteous. We're very high on ourselves. You know, we're getting high on our own supply, and we think, you know, especially if we have college educations, we could never be fooled. No one could ever possibly lie to us. Who would dare ever do that? So, you know, really? So let's get back to the synopsis here. Keep this under 10 minutes for everyone who doesn't want to stay for the full video. So we're at the end of this grace period of us, being self-righteous and egotistical and wanting to force our belief systems onto other people and not wanting to see different perspectives. I was going to say both sides, but having only two sides, that's a construct of the whole age of Pisces that we're coming out of. There's more than two sides, and once we can see this, we're not going to be at each other's throats over, our favorite television characters that we call politicians. So, but at the very least, you can see things, if you can't accept multiple perspectives, and you can at least accept another perspective on the other side from you. So, we're getting to the point where we consider people who have opinions that disagree with ours and biases that disagree with our biases to be our enemies. And it's like, no, they're your fellow citizens. They're not your enemy. But that's the thing. We've lived such soft and easy lives here in the West, especially here in the United States. We don't even know what the hell an enemy is, because anytime we feel threatened, we call the cops and we whine. It's like, and life is easy. We don't know what an enemy is. So again, we're coming to the end of really being petty and being self-righteous and being so stuck in our own belief systems. We can't even imagine that someone else could have an opinion different than ours without being our enemy. So we're nearing the end of that grace period, and really we have to grow up, because the moon is in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is all about belief systems and philosophies, and it's at 29 degrees. So there are 30 degrees in a sign. So the moon is in the 29th degree now, and it's at the final fruition. 29 degrees is the final fruition of a sign. Things can go no farther than that before they go into a new sign. And as the moon is here, it gets darkened by the shadow of Rahu. Rahu is the eclipse. So, and like I said in my earlier videos, eclipses are all about the darkening of the light. So what happens is, as human beings, we try to only acknowledge the sunny side of ourselves, of our emotions, of our thoughts, of our nature. And we only want to show other people our sunny sides, and we have a tendency to only acknowledge things that are wonderful, or if things are not wonderful, we act like things are wonderful. And, this day and age, anger is a sin. People, if someone's angry, they act all put off, and, they say, people equate like anger with lack of intelligence, and that's not true at all. Anger is actually a catalyst for making changes in your life. But that's where things have gone, especially in a new age. People are like, oh, anger's not spiritual. Well, it can be spiritual when it's appropriate, when you need to make a change. But pathological anger is not good. It hurts your body, and people don't want to be around you. It hurts your health, and it makes you kind of repellent. I know all about this. So it's all about situations. It's all about context. So, and then another big theme right now is we're in kind of a powerful window for manifestation. So Jupiter, retrograde Jupiter specifically, has been in Scorpio for a long time. And check my notes here for this nakshatra. It's been in the nakshatra of Jesha. So that's the heart of the scorpion. It's actually the star Antares. And at the maximum of the lunar eclipse at about 5:30 East Coast time, Jupiter in Scorpio is going to be in the ascendant house, in the first house. So the first house is us and our personalities and like our physical selves. So this is a powerful window for manifestation. But the other side of the coin is that it brings low self-esteem. And really, we've all been raised, in the age of Pisces and Piscean values. And part of the age of Pisces for the common people is being conditioned to have low self-esteem. We learn it everywhere. We learn it at school. We learn it from our families. We learn it at work, because it's a lot easier to rule masses of people when they don't believe in themselves and they don't think much of themselves. So, and then when self-esteem is low, ego inflates, because ego and self-esteem are two sides of the coin. You know, it's like everyone needs an ego to live in this physical world, because your ego is your personality, and your personality helps you to interact with other people and interact with the world. But, you know, when someone doesn't have enough self-esteem, ego really inflates. You know, and then when you have self-esteem, your ego is very appropriate. You know, and it's not self-absorbed, and it's not selfish. That's the difference. So ego can be self-absorbed and selfish when it's inflated, or it can just be appropriate, and it's more receptive to other people. So the whole point here is we're in this powerful manifestation window, but self-esteem is low. You know, I think it's at an ebb right now due to the astrology. You know, the astrology is indicating it, because that's sort of the season of the universe, if you will. But, you know, we've had low self-esteem collectively, especially in the, you know, in the Judeo-Christian world for the last 2,000 years. But really, in the whole world, it's like this. You know, it's like this in India. It's like this in East Asia, everywhere. You know, because it's the age of Pisces everywhere. It has been the age of Pisces everywhere on Earth for the last 2,000 years. And Pisces is all about haves and have-nots. You're either in control, or you're one of the vast numbers of people who's not in control. And you're just supposed to shut up and do what you're told, and be grateful. And it doesn't matter if you have fulfillment or how you feel or whatever. Just do what you're told, and just be a cog in the machine. So to manifest correctly, to manifest what's really brings us joy and what's really in our hearts and will make us happy, we need to have self-esteem. Because to manifest, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe in your life path, and you have to know your life path. Before you can believe in your life path, you have to know what it is. And to do all that, you need self-esteem. When you don't have self-esteem, the things you try to manifest are products of your fear. You know, you try to manifest money because you're afraid of not having a bunch of money. Or, you know, you manifest again from your ego because your self-esteem is low. And when we do this, we get it half right. You kind of half manifest. You get something that you didn't, it's not what you thought it was going to be, and it's disappointing. So we need to get out of that. But, you know, we've been conditioned to have low self-esteem for generations. So this is the challenge right now. It's not just a negative, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for alchemy. You know, and alchemy is inner transformation. It's taking your baggage and transforming it into your greatest strengths and your greatest attributes. So it's a challenge and an opportunity. So let's get into the specifics of this reading, because I've got a lot to cover. So, like I said, lunar eclipse at 29 degrees of Sagittarius. So, and what's interesting here is when you look at the nakshatra, you know, the mini constellation where the moon is, you know, that nakshatra is called, excuse me. So that mini constellation where the moon is, where this eclipse is taking place in 29 degrees of Sagittarius, is called Purva Ashada. So the symbol for it is the fan. So, and Sagittarius is all about, you know, higher knowledge and philosophy and higher information. So the idea with this fan, the symbol of a fan, is that it's fanning, you know, higher knowledge and, you know, relative enlightenment, you know, across the world, so it can be shared with people. So this is where the moon is, and this is where our mind is, you know, because the moon is a symbol of the mind. You know, the moon reflects the light of the sun. That's why it illuminates at night. And the sun symbolizes the soul. Well, the moon symbolizes our minds, so our minds reflect our souls. And the mind is not just the intellect, it's all of your emotions, your overall thinking, you know, your personality, the way you interact with the world. So the moon is in this Purva Ashada, and it's in the last quarter of it. It's in the fourth quarter of Purva Ashada. And again, there are 27 of these mini constellations, these nakshatras, and there are 2.5 in each zodiac sign. And they work behind the scenes of the sign. So this Purva Ashada, this fan, it wants to, you know, it wants to spread higher knowledge and enlightenment. But that's the positive. But then the flip side, the negative side, is that when the moon's in this nakshatra, we get very self-righteous because we get very preoccupied with purity and with what we consider to be the truth, because really the world is made up of a series of perceptions. It's hard to find any real absolute objective truths. It's like in a police lineup, you put 10 people there, and witnesses will identify each one of them as a perpetrator of a crime. It's like everyone is really seeing something different. So our minds here in this Purva Ashada, it's self-righteous because we, no matter what your religious, political, whatever affiliation is, we all have our version of the truth, and we're trying to impose it on people, whether we think we are or not. And this comes from thinking that we have the absolute truth and we can fix the world with it if we can just get people to believe it. And things are getting to a point now where if we can't get people to believe our version of the truth, we try to shut people up. And so, we're seeing a lot of media censorship right now. It's like stuff's getting pulled off of YouTube, and Twitter's getting tampered with, and Facebook's throwing people off, and it's like, and it kind of goes back to the hate speech thing, and there are definitely a lot of hateful people in this world, but this hate speech thing is really getting abused because when people don't want to present a counter argument to what someone else is saying, they just run and call it hate speech, and they get it banned so they don't have to reply. So it's very intellectually lazy, and it's being used by people who do consider themselves high intellectuals. So there's a lot of hypocrisy going on right now, and that's the other thing too, is with this moon in this placement in this Purva Ashada, it's not only self-righteous, but when people get self-righteous, they get hypocritical too. And since politics is everywhere right now and it's in our faces, I use it as an example. So when you look at the left and the right politically, the right talks about freedom and the left talks about diversity, but I really don't know many people who actually live up to that, because on the right, people they want you to have the freedom to agree with all of their values and be Christian and have a nuclear family and do exactly what they do and be extremely pro-military. And if you don't do that, then they want to shut you up and they get angry with you and they perceive you as a threat. So it's like they don't really believe in freedom. They talk freedom. They just want people to be free to be just like them. And it's the same shit on the left, because the left talks about diversity, day in and day out. But if you don't agree with them, then they get all hostile and they try to ban you, and people on the left get really angry too. So, and really this idea of diversity in the mainstream is that, we'll have diversity when we all agree with each other and, we all have the same opinion and no one says anything contradictory to what we think. So they all do the same stuff, and it goes back to that dysfunctional marriage thing, That's what left-right politics is, It's like, the one says to the other within a couple, my life was amazing till you and your family came along and you ruined everything, and you can translate family as party, you know what I mean? And it's like, well, if you're, if what you had was, if you were so great in the beginning, you wouldn't have a big pain in the ass in your life, and that's the thing I've learned too, is that when if we're surrounded by pains in the ass and difficult people, it's because we're pains in the ass and difficult people too on some level, and other people are reflecting who we are back to us. So that's just the way it is, you know what I mean? And so another big theme of this lunar eclipse is self-improvement. So it's all about don't bother what other people are doing, what other people are saying, See what you can change about yourself. First you have to take an honest look at yourself, and that's the hardest thing to do. It's like people would rather throw themselves onto live hand grenades than they would take honest looks at it themselves and see how they really feel and, see what's really going on. But, that's what you have to do. So self-improvement is the theme here. So take an honest look at yourself. See where you're off. See where you're self-righteous. See where you're not allowing other people's perspectives to be voiced and to be heard. You know, and even if you do consider them the enemy and they're so horrible or whatever, it's like, well, words aren't going to kill you. So just, you know, be more receptive, you know, see where people are coming from and improve yourself. You know, and that's a big thing, especially in the age of Pisces that we've gotten into. We've put hating and nitpicking above self-improvement because, again, we've been raised not to have self-esteem. So it's like, we don't think we can get any better. So let's go chase someone else down. And, you know, that's what the, you know, the Inquisitions with the Catholic Church were all about. It was about nitpicking the way other people were living and chasing them down and burning them at the stake. You know, it's about criticizing and nitpicking and hating other people for not being in good standing with our little club. So see where you can improve. Instead of getting all wrapped around the axle about what Donald Trump or AOC tweeted or Ilhan Omar tweeted, you know, see how you can improve yourself, because there's only so much you can do about them, which is usually, you know, little. I don't have access to those people. I can't call them up and give them a piece of my mind. So improve yourself. But again, this requires us to not be self-righteous and to not be wrapped up in our own ego agendas and thinking that we have the absolute truth, and not being wrapped up in the idea that our version of the absolute truth is going to fix the whole world, because, you know, everybody's messed up in some way. And we're all equally messed up, really. We just like to surround ourselves with people who are messed up in the same way, because it puts us in an echo chamber where we're always hearing what we want to hear, and we're always hearing that we're right. So, you know, you really want to be diverse, surround yourself with people who don't tell you what you want to hear. Then you're going to be diverse, or then you're really going to be into freedom. So think about that. So anyway, we get this moon in Sagittarius, and we have this axis between Sagittarius and Gemini because they're opposite signs. So, you know, also in Sagittarius here with the moon, you know, like I've been talking about, we have Pluto, K2, and Saturn. So Pluto, the god of the underworld in mythology, you know, and basically the god of the underworld makes you deal with things that you don't want to deal with, that you've been denying, that you've been repressing, or that other people have been hiding from you. So Pluto is kind of a wrecking ball. And so what he does is he smashes down, you know, the edifices, the constructions of our egos, and he makes us deal with the real stuff that we've been denying or that's been hidden. So Pluto is here in Sagittarius. It's 27 degrees. It's in the final degrees of Sagittarius. So Pluto is smashing down this self-righteousness about our beliefs and how we can fix everyone in the world with our version of the truth. So Pluto's basically saying, yeah, you know, you don't get to be self-righteous anymore. You need to look at yourself and see what you've been denying and what you've been repressing within yourself and within your communities, your countries, whatever, and deal with the hidden information and with the hidden insights and the hidden emotions and the behaviors that you've been hiding from yourself because you don't want to admit that you do them. So, and then down at 23 and 22 degrees of Sagittarius, you have K2 and Saturn. So, you know, Saturn, the judge of the cosmos, Saturn keeps you on your life path. When you stray from your life path, Saturn gives you obstacles and gives you disappointments. And K2 is kind of a monk, kind of a mystic that is not concerned with the material world and just wants to be in the spirit world and, you know, be all about spirituality. And, you know, K2 on a good day is like a mystic and like a spiritual teacher and a monk, and on a bad day, K2 is a terrorist. And when you put these two, because K2 is selfless, and, you know, selflessness is not always such a great thing, because you can be manipulated when you're selfless. You can be wound up, you know, and turned against an enemy for a cause, or someone who you've been told is your enemy on behalf of a cause, and you've never thought twice about the whole thing because you have no sense of yourself. You're just all about the people who are telling you to do whatever they want you to do. So, but anyway, when you put Ketu and Saturn together, you get a mystic that teaches you how to destroy all the excess and just all the bullshit, all the unnecessary things in your life, and teaches you how to build new attitudes and new belief systems. And when you build new attitudes and belief systems, you get a whole new world. So that's what the combination of these two are together. But when you go back to Ketu on its own in Sagittarius, this has strong connotations for terrorism. And Ketu was in Sagittarius back in 2001. And when Ketu's in Sagittarius, Rahu is in Gemini. So we're sort of back to where we were with the Rahu and Ketu placements as we were in 2001. And in 2001, just like this year, you had eclipses in the summer and then you had them in December. So solar and lunar, because lunar follows the solar. And right in the middle, you had 9/11. So there's a lot in the astrology this year with, potentials for this, for terrorism. And terrorism is ideological extremism that leads people to irrational and selfless acts of violence. So I'm hoping it's not going to come to this. But if we keep up with our extremism, and again, extremism is mainstream right now for all political sides. There's a lot of religious extremism, not just Islamic. So if we keep up with this extremism, we're going to be taught a lesson again. So I hope it doesn't come to that, but it's all on us. It's all on us finding that self-improvement, being honest with ourselves and finding that self-improvement. When you do that, when you improve yourself, it's contagious. Even people who you thought were your enemy start unconsciously, subconsciously, they start noticing a difference and they start doing it too. So that's the way out of this. It's not about getting bossed around by the next politician, by the right politicians for the next 4 years. It's all about what we do with ourselves. And that's what Aquarius is about. It's about individuality balanced with cooperation. And that's what we're going into. So again, the moon here, it spells, this eclipse spells the end for that Piscean, age of Pisces self-righteousness, where there's only two sides, and the side that I pick or that you pick is always right, and it's good and righteous, and the other side that disagrees with us or you or me is always the devil and is always evil and horrible and monstrous. And another thing in the age of Pisces, we get into a lot of dehumanizing and demonizing people who don't agree with us. And that's huge right now. So we got to kick that to the curb, or we're going to suffer, to be honest with you. So, our lives are fated, but there's flexibility within fate. So what are you going to do with the opportunity? Improve yourself. See what you can do in your life and for yourself. And if you do that, it's contagious. Other people start improving themselves too. People who you thought were your enemy, they're actually not your enemy. So work this, because that's what the age of Aquarius is going to be about. It's not going to be about, selecting the finest people with the best educations to boss us around and stuff us into one-size-fits-all lives and belief systems. We're actually going to have to cooperate with each other, and work together while still being individuals. And that's a lot of responsibility. That's more responsibility than, people really want to handle. They want to be told what to do and what to think. So, and again, I think too, we're going to start seeing our political systems, our, religious institutions, our educational institutions, because they're all involved with, philosophy and higher knowledge. They're all going to start coming apart because they're of the age of Pisces, which is just about bossing people around and us just being in our place, being cogs in a machine, rather than individuals who feel joy over the things we do with our time and feel fulfilled. So that's all over. So this stuff is going to start falling apart. The whole political thing is getting it's getting ugly. It's like we're in an election year and the two parties are going to be fighting, but the parties are going to be fighting within themselves. We're already seeing it in the Democratic Party, where there's different factions and they're gonna be at each other's throats. I think they're gonna be spilling dirt about each other and incriminating each other and making each other look bad, and it's gonna it's going to cause a certain amount of disillusionment among the people. You know, and the Republicans are going to do stuff like this too, but they haven't started yet, but everybody's going to do it. So moving along here, so across from all of that Moon, Saturn, K2, and Pluto and Sagittarius, there's Gemini on the other side of the axis. So Gemini is the house of, you know, social activity, media, performance. It's all about trade, commerce. And so, you know, in Gemini, the sun is also 29 degrees because sun and moon are always at the same degree when you have an eclipse. So, or lunar eclipse. They're at the same degree in opposite signs during lunar eclipses. Same degree, same house and sign during solars. Anyway, so in Gemini, you've got sun at 29 degrees and you've got Rahu at 23 degrees, Venus at 22 degrees. So here in Gemini, let me look up this nakshatra real quick. So this nakshatra, this mini constellation in Gemini is Punarvasu. And so Punarvasu is basically it's called the return of the light. And it's the sunlight coming back out after a storm. So earlier in Gemini, where we had the solar eclipse, it was Ardra. Ardra is the teardrop. It's the nakshatra, the mini constellation of tragic events. It's called the howling wind, like storm winds. So basically, it moves from Ardra to Punarvasu. So Punarvasu is the return of the light when the sun comes back out after a violent storm. So in this part of Gemini, when you have planets here, you know, these planets or these parts of ourselves, because the planets are all parts of our consciousness, our minds. So when planets are here, we're thinking about rebuilding, because after a storm, you know, especially like in tropical areas, you know, like India, where this comes from, you have to rebuild a lot after tropical storms because they're so violent. So we've got the sun in 29 degrees in Punarvasu in Gemini. So the sun, the soul, or, you know, even our ego, you know, because it symbolizes the ego kind of on this earthly plane. Our ego is thinking about rebuilding, and it's about thinking about rebuilding like kind of an ideal utopian world. And since it's in Gemini, this is being communicated. You know, and a lot of people are doing this. Again, you know, you go back to politics, you go to religion, they're always talking about building ideal worlds and utopias and, you know, the kingdom of God and, you know, make the country great again, make the country compassionate and progressive. It's all about, you know, it's all about sort of having this vision or this fantasy of, you know, this ideal world. So the sun, the ego is thinking about this, but it's in the last degrees. So it's like, you know, and sometimes, you know, again, when we're self-righteous because the moon is looking back across at the sun in Gemini from where it is in Sagittarius, you know, when we're self-righteous, we're not thinking about other people's perspectives and other people's opinions. So with this placement, you know, the sun is thinking about building some ideal world that it imagines. You know, our ego is thinking about some ideal world that it imagines, but it's not asking the people around us who don't share our biases and our views, what do you want the world to look like in the future? It's just, it's so fixated, so self-righteously fixated on its own view, and it's just pushing that. So, but it, again, just like the moon, it's at that last degree where it's like, you know, your time for being self-righteous and egotistical and one-sided, no matter what your political, religious, racial, whatever affiliation is, it's coming to an end. And once it comes to an end, you're going to have to, the universe is going to put you on the spot, and you're going to have to cooperate with other people. And if you don't do that, you're going to keep falling on your face. So, you know, a big thing with this lunar eclipse is it's teaching us that none of us, and none of our little clubs that we belong to, our political, religious, ethnic, racial, whatever, none of our little clubs are going to get the smug victory, the smug, total, one-sided victory that they're looking for. You know, when you cooperate with other people and see other people's perspectives, you have to compromise a little bit. You know, it's not all your way or the highway. So, you know, that's where we're at here. So again, you've got the sun here thinking about rebuilding, the ego thinking about rebuilding, you know, building this ideal world. It's at 29 degrees. And then at 23 degrees, you have Rahu, and at 23 you have Venus. So Rahu and Venus are practically on top of each other. So like I mentioned in my earlier videos, you know, when you get Rahu and Venus this close, Rahu expands the qualities of Venus. And since Venus is in Gemini, which is the sign of social activity, you know, neighbors, siblings, friends, media, speaking. When Venus is here, Venus, and then it's coupled with Rahu that's expanding it, Venus can't get enough of any of those things. It can't get enough love, adoration, admiration, support. You know, and Rahu is the head of the dragon, so it consumes. It can't get enough of anything. It's never satisfied. So it's interesting, you know, we're in election season already, and you've got a bunch of people, and even the people who are not trying to get elected, you know, even, you know, both parties, they can't get enough support because they think they're going to build some ideal world. You know, the right thinks they're going to, you know, bring us back to the 1980s or the 1950s and build a future like that. And the left thinks it's going to bring us back to the Clinton days or the days of FDR and the New Deal. We got a new Green Deal idea flying around. So the left thinks we're going to bring us back to the New Deal or the Clinton days or the Civil Rights era, you know, and they're going to build a future just like that, you know, but both sides are doing this out of fear. That's the other thing. So, because you can't go back in time, you know, thinking you can go back in time to times that you remember as ideal, that's a product of fear because you can't face the future. You're overwhelmed by the idea of facing the future. So we can build a great future. We can build a really positive, bright future, but you can never go back to the past. You can't just, you know, pick a decade and say, yeah, we're going to do this again because, yeah, I think it's a good idea. And I guess I remember it as, you know, being totally ideal. So that, you know, that's what we want to do, but we're not allowed. So going back to Rahu and Venus together, you know, this expanded Venus via Rahu is just trying to get support, is trying to get all the admiration and support and adoration and love and, you know, flattery so that it can go ahead and build what it perceives as this new ideal world. So all the presidential candidates are doing it right now. You know, there's so many of them, and there's only so much love and support they can get, you know. And again, this Venus and Rahu together, it's a sticky kind of, you know, sticky lover that comes on way too strong and is just way too up in your business, and it's almost repellent, you know. And I don't know, I find political candidates to be that way personally. You know, like I said before, it reminds me of someone running for president of student council, you know, and acting like they're your friend. You know, I think the government is just, it's the student council kids, you know, decades later with law degrees and, you know, making some insider trading money. So that's my opinion. So anyway, we have this axis, the Sagittarius Gemini axis. You've got the Rahu in Gemini. It's consuming, can't get enough of communication, so its mouth is running. And then you've got Ketu, the extremist in Sagittarius of belief system. So it's like, we just can't stop communicating our extremist views, no matter what side you're on. And both sides are extremist, you know, politically speaking. So, but we have to be aware of this. Once you're aware of something, you can start changing things and getting over things. You can work that alchemy, turn the baggage, turn the negatives into positives. So let's move on here. So the next thing I want to get into, I want to go back to what I was saying about the ascendant. So, you know, you've got, again, manifestation window, Jupiter in the first house, and it's at the heart of the Scorpion. And So we have to have the self-esteem here, you know. And what I was saying with Gemini and Rahu, you know, it can't get enough love and admiration and adoration. That's like a person with low self-esteem, like they're just not confident in and of themselves. And so, you know, at the maximum of this eclipse, Jupiter's telling us the same thing. You know, Jupiter, our higher consciousness, is telling us, you know, you're in this manifestation window, but your self-esteem is low. And so again, Jupiter retrograde, when Jupiter's retrograde, it goes from being, you know, the nice, chill, spiritual teacher that doesn't want to hurt anyone's feelings and can kind of get walked on like a doormat because it doesn't want to tell anyone they're wrong. So in Jupiter's retrograde, it changes from that to kind of a guru that, you know, doesn't care if he hurts your feelings or not. He's there to teach you something. You know, it's like Thor throwing a hammer or Zeus throwing a lightning bolt. So the higher consciousness is giving us this stirring sense of anger, and it's saying, hey, you know, raise yourself up, get out of this low self-esteem and create yourself a better life in a better world. So I think that's really important. I haven't heard a lot of other people talking about this, but I think it's a big deal. So then, moving on. We go to the fourth house. So the fourth house is all about nurturing, maternal energy, home, comfort. It's also the homeland. And so we've got Neptune in here. We've got Neptune in retrograde. So Neptune, when a planet goes retrograde, it's even more intense. So Neptune is all about delusion. It's about not seeing things clearly. And, you know, a thing that's associated with Neptune is visual media, visual electronic media. So television, internet, you know, movies, news, it's coming through visual media. So, you know, what this describes having, and then, you know, Neptune in this fourth house is in Aquarius, and Aquarius is we the people. It's the mass of the people. So when you've got Neptune in Aquarius in the fourth house, this is saying that the people are not seeing the issues of the home and the homeland with clarity. They're actually, you know, they're seeing it through like a fogged glass, you know, almost like opaque glass. They're seeing it through like a trick lens, you know. So they're not seeing things clearly. They're actually being diluted, you know. And then since Neptune is visual media, you know, because, you know, Neptune is about illusions, and visual media is an illusion. So it's like, I'm sitting here in Massachusetts, right? Well, let's say I'm, you know, watching a speech on television, and someone in you know, I don't know, London is giving a speech. I'm not actually looking at that person in London. I'm looking at what came through the camera, you know, what light and sound that the camera and the microphone captured. But I'm not looking at raw footage. We're never looking at raw footage when we're watching the news. This, you know, the footage and the sound that has been captured is going through a media company that has a bias, that has a very definite bias, because it has a definite audience that it wants to keep coming back so that they can make money. So, you know, media, mass media, visual mass media, whatever mass media, it's a way of diluting people. So, you know, again, so we're diluted, and we're not seeing clearly what's going on. We the people are not seeing clearly what's going on in the homeland. And then you've got a bunch of aspects. So you've got a bunch of planets looking at this fourth house with Aquarius and Neptune there. So you've got a third aspect of Saturn, you've got an eighth aspect of Mars. So both Saturn and Mars are looking at this fourth house where Neptune and Aquarius are. Wherever you get Mars and wherever you get Mars and Saturn either together or just looking at each other or looking at the same house, you get a battleground. Because Saturn's fire, Saturn is oil, Mars is fire. So oil and fire create an explosion. And then you have Rahu's ninth aspect. So Rahu is just expanding this explosive quality. So again, you know, with this fourth house, with Aquarius and Neptune, with all these other planets looking at it, you're getting an amplification of, you know, anger and conflict in the homeland, and anger and conflict on the people's part. So we need to see things clearly. We can't take for granted that people are telling us the truth, that people running multi-billion-dollar media companies are telling us the truth, and that, people in government who are owned and sponsored by multi-billion-dollar corporations are telling us the truth just because, we work and we went to college and maybe we served in the military. Again, it goes back to the low self-esteem. When self-esteem is low, ego is huge. So deflate that ego and step back and consider that, people with shitloads of money and power are probably not telling you the truth out of the goodness of their hearts. Think about that. So that, Homeland's battleground because we're not seeing things clearly. We're being manipulated to fight each other, really. So we're going to move on to the 9th house here. So in the 9th house is Jupiter's temple. It's the house of spirituality, philosophy, higher knowledge, higher education. So what we have there, we have the sign of Cancer. So Cancer is the sign of nourishment, maternal energy, emotions, home, comfort. And so in Cancer, basically our higher knowledge is dealing with emotions right now. And, philosophy, higher knowledge, all dealing with emotions. And, and then we have to also deal with the spiritual aspects of our emotions right now. So in this 9th house with Cancer, we have Mars at 15 degrees and we have a retrograde Mercury at 7 degrees. And so, what this all means is that, Mars is like, it's considered the warrior planet, but there's different types of warriors, and not all warriors are, hyper masculine and, out of touch with their feelings. But, you can imagine Mars as like being like very hyper masculine, very like macho man, it's all about vitality and action and go, and it's rough and it's, kind of violent. So Mars is in this sign of Cancer, which is all about emotions. So you can imagine this hyper masculine macho man on a therapist's couch being told to talk about his feelings. Well, he doesn't want to do it. He's pissed off and he's frustrated and he feels like he's wasting his time. So Mars is debilitated in Cancer, doesn't like being in Cancer. Mars is fiery, Cancer is watery. Mars is action and Cancer is emotions and, comfort. So, you get Mars in Cancer, you get flooding and like heavy rainfall like we're seeing, and I just saw that. So I was reading about, people are talking about food shortages in the economy, not famine food shortages, but just shortages that make prices go up. So they're talking about the cornfields in Illinois and how the corn is just barely peeking out of the ground because the Mississippi Valley has had so much rain and cloudiness and cool weather. By this point in July, the corn should be like waist high. So the breadbasket is suffering, and everything in the economy, all commodities are actually based on the price of cattle feed. It's been like this for hundreds of years, and it's still this way. So everything in the economy is based on what it costs to feed cattle. And since corn is what is fed the most cattle, prices of a lot of things are going to go up. And also with this frustrated Mars and Cancer, we're seeing earthquakes. California has been getting its share, and Australia, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia. There's been a lot of earthquakes around the world. Volcanism too. So then with this Mercury retrograde, Mercury's not debilitated in Cancer, but it doesn't necessarily like being there because Mercury is the intellect and it wants to handle details and data and facts and numbers. It doesn't want to think about emotions, and Mercury is communication, so it doesn't want to communicate about emotions. And then Mercury retrograde, it slows things down, and communication gets garbled. So then when you put Mercury and Mars together, you get angry communication. But it's garbled communication. It's not articulate and it's not logical. So we're seeing a lot in this world right now, especially here in the States, in Europe too. We're seeing a lot of garbled, inarticulate, highly emotional, and non-logical communication. So, and then I want to look at these nakshatras here. You know, you have there, it's in Pushya. So Pushya is, it's called the cow's udder, and it's all about, you know, nourishment, because, you know, milk comes out of udders, you know, and feed little calves. So Pushya is all about nourishment, and, you know, especially Mars here, it's in the fourth quarter of Pushya. And so what this does is it gives, you know, when a planet is in this Pushya, this fourth quarter of it, it gives it ability to really get in depth and understand other people and understand their emotions and where they're coming from, so that it can help people. Because, you know, Pushya is, it's like a nakshatra of like caregivers and healers. So, you know, it has this ability to really get deep in and really understand other people and serve other people. But then the other side of the coin is that when, you know, when this service doesn't feel appreciated or recognized, people can actually get kind of murderously angry, and they can kind of get indifferent, you know, and they'll stalk people, and they'll even hurt people, you know, as like a revenge for you know, them not appreciating their service and their caregiving, and, you know, and recognizing it. Or, you know, they'll just let people hurt themselves when, you know, when they could actually warn them and help them. And then, you know, Mercury is in the third quarter. It's in the third part of Pushya. So, you know, this makes Mercury, it's, you know, natural healer and caregiver, and it's perfectionist about it. The other side of the coin is that it can get very OCD about this work. And it's actually, its emotions get all wrapped up in data and facts and, you know, little details. And they miss the big picture, and they forget that the big picture is, as a caregiver and as a healer, is about relating to other people. And it's about, you know, being empathetic to another person and understanding their feelings and where they're coming from. So, and a lot of this is happening, you know, again, it's the ninth house, it's philosophy. So people right now, both political sides, you know, they have these grandiose philosophies, and they're trying to push them on other people, and they're not seeing the other person's perspective. So, you know, the other side's perspective. And that's a problem too, is they're seeing this as, you know, the whole world is only being two-sided. That's a big problem. And that's an Age of Pisces thing, again, that's on its way out. So, because in the Age of Pisces, there's only good and evil, God and the devil, is nothing in between. So, interesting thing here is that in this ninth house with Cancer, with Mars and Mercury retrograde together, it's looking across the zodiac from the ninth house to the third house. And the sign in the third house at this maximum of the lunar eclipse is Capricorn, and Capricorn is the sign of government and authority and hierarchy. So people are communicating this highly emotional, you know, non-logical anger at the government. And, you know, and they're getting, you know, some people are getting murderously angry about it. You know, it's like that guy in Washington State he was an Antifa member. He went and he tried to torch a detention facility, and you know, he paid the price for running up on a bunch of law enforcement people holding a rifle and, you know, Molotov cocktails. Like, he torched a car in the parking lot, and he's no longer with us. So that's a manifestation of this. You know, people are just getting so murderously angry about, you know, their point of view and their version of the truth, and being able to just, you know, force the changes they want on everyone else. So that's where we're at. So thanks for tuning in for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. Go ahead and check out my website. I'll put that address in the comments, but my website address is thecosmicalchemist.com. I have a summer sale going on. It's 25% off for the coupon code SUMMER. You can book a Vedic astrology reading with me. You can book a rune reading. And I have videos for download as well. I have 2 Qigong videos for download. One of them is it's called Celestial Qigong. It's a very grounding, sort of settling practice. And then I have Thor's Hammer Qigong, and that's very, you know, revitalizing and very energizing. So again, coupon code SUMMER, 25% off. Thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you later.